Hi everyone. Yes, my sound is working. Hi everyone, welcome along to the Comet 25.8 Titan release webinar. My name is Mason and I work for Comet Backup here in New Zealand. So thanks for joining me. I'm coming to you live today. It is currently 8 a.m. here in New Zealand. So good morning or good afternoon or evening, whatever time zone you're in. To make the time zones easier, you're welcome to subscribe to notifications about when we go live. It's all on the webinar platform. You can get a notification, shows you in your own time zone when the presentation will be. And after the webinar, we will post the recording on YouTube. So if you're watching the replay on YouTube, then hi from the future. But if you're live with us this morning, then thanks for coming along. And as a special thank you for making the live time slot, we are doing a live question and answer session at the end. So we'll take questions as we go. On the webinar platform, there is a chat and questions widget at the bottom right of the screen. So click the button to pop it open. And if you have any questions during the presentation, just write them in and I'll do my best to answer them at the end. If you're a long-time watcher of the series of technical webinars, this is episode 34. And if you're a brand new watcher, I'll just start with the essential Comet background information. So in Comet, there are 2 release tracks. And every week, give or take, we publish our absolute latest changes as part of what we call the Voyager rolling release series. And then 4 times a year, all of these changes get bundled up into one new major quarterly release. And we've found that strikes a really good balance of getting, early access, early features, early feedback, and then that builds up into something that, where it's that we can qualify and support for a longer period of time. And by the time you get to that quarterly release, these changes have been battle tested, they've been in production, and so they're ready for your production use. It's up to you which track you follow. They're both available for the self-hosted product. And for the majority of our partners who do follow the quarterly release tracks, we have just done that bundling up. So we are very proud to have just launched our latest release, Comet 25.8 Titan, which rolls up all the changes we've made in that Voyager series, those weekly releases throughout June, July, and August. So that process wound up in August. You can see our version number is 25.8, and that's the year.month. I say August. Theoretically, it wound up in August, but you'll notice the release date is 10th of September. So we're about 10 days off schedule this time around, but hey, no big deal. So today, in my presentation, we'll be covering the changes and new features we've added over the last 3 months. The code name for this release is Titan. So this release is named after one of Saturn's moons, and all of our releases are named after solar system objects. So Titan is a moon of Saturn. We've been using the names of Saturn's moons for code names for our last few releases. We did our Saturn release back in 2023, and then Saturn has over 270 known moons. So we might be using these code names for a while. Titan is Saturn's largest moon. It's big. It's bigger than some planets. It's bigger than Mercury. Saturn's moons are almost all named after mythological giants, but only Titan is named after a whole race of giants. So it's big. And we've been saving the big name for when we have a big feature to announce. What else can I tell you? Titan is the only moon in the whole solar system with a substantial atmosphere. It's the only place besides Earth in our solar system that is known to have clouds, rain, rivers, lakes, and seas. Of course, those are seas of hydrocarbons, and the atmosphere is totally nitrogen, and the whole thing is negative 180 degrees. So don't book a holiday there. But you can go, or at least spacecraft can go. We've been there. Multiple spacecraft have visited Titan since the 1970s, and this is what it looks like when you land on it. This photo was taken by the Huygens lander in 2005, then airdropped a million kilometers back to us by the Cassini orbiter. So astonishing photo, the surface of another world. But enough about the name and the moon. What about the features? So in the changelog for this release, we've listed 4 new features and 7 enhancements. And today's presentation will go into detail about these features and what's new when you upgrade from the previous quarterly release, 25.5 Hyperion, and one very big new feature in particular. Now, this presentation today will probably be about 30 minutes long, more or less, and that's including some time for those live questions at the end. I know everyone's busy, so thank you very much for coming along. We'll try and keep to the schedule. Hope you've got a coffee, get comfortable, settle in, and we'll just get underway. So the biggest new feature in Comet 25.8 Titan, I'm very pleased to announce the public availability of our new Proxmox backup feature. So what is Proxmox? Proxmox is a hypervisor, and that means it's the thing that runs virtual machines and also containers. So it's kind of like VMware or Hyper-V. It's great, honestly. It's reliable. It's based on rock solid QEMU and KVM technology. Proxmox, it's easy to use, nice web interface, but it still supports really advanced functionality, and it's been really popular recently. And unlike VMware or Hyper-V, Proxmox is free to use with optional commercial support contracts. We've been following along the feature request in our feature voting system, and this has been a really popular request from you all, from the community of Comet users, and now it's finally available. So we've set this up as a new protected item type. Proxmox has its own backup features in the interface. You're welcome to use it, of course. We really wanted our backup feature to fit in with the rest of Comet's infrastructure. So if you're using Comet, if you're monitoring and managing other backups with Comet, then your Proxmox backups as well, part of Comet, and just making them completely seamless. So as a protected item, it supports all the usual features, remotely configure the settings from your management console, remotely browse files, look at the job reports, and so on. You may see here in the screenshot, it does say Proxmox in brackets beta. Again, thank you to all the partners who tried out our private beta in the last Voyager series, and thank you for all your feedback. We're aware of one or two known issues that we can improve on, but actually nothing serious. The backup functionality is solid and reliable. We're more than happy to stand by it. While it is still a beta, um, we're offering this protected item for no additional cost while that beta label is on. After we leave the beta program, we do expect to charge at probably the same cost as the Hyper-V protected item, but free to use during the beta. So it's a protected item. That means you go create new protected item, you click next, and you'll be prompted for SSH credentials to the cluster. So Comet can connect to any one of the nodes in your cluster and back up the whole cluster from any node. So that's up to you. If you're running Comet from inside a VM on Proxmox or from the Proxmox host itself, and then you would select probably the node itself just to minimize the hops and the cross-cluster sort of network traffic, but it actually doesn't matter too much, we've found. And after you've entered your credentials, you click next, and then you can select VMs and containers for backup. So Comet supports selecting individual VMs and containers, or you can just select the whole node or the whole cluster and exclude things that you don't want to back up. You can also deselect and select individual disks. So for instance, if you have a VM with an important OS disk and then like a less important temporary disk, you can just exclude that temporary disk. And that's it. From then on out, it's just another Comet protected item running regular Comet backup jobs. And everything else is just like Comet. So scheduling, email reports, deduplication. So we will deduplicate data across VMs. And of course, we'll also deduplicate today's backup against yesterday's backup so that you only use that incremental storage space. Comet supports granular restore so that you can restore individual files out of the VM. That supports Windows NTFS, Linux ext4, and XFS file systems. And that's based on Comet's existing mature support for these file systems. Granular restore is a feature that we know works really well in Comet. And maybe most interesting is we support cross-hypervisor restore. And this is from any of our supported protected item types that deal with sort of disk images and virtual disk images. So for instance, if you are currently a VMware user and you're using Comet for VMware backups, you could restore those VMware backups directly into Proxmox, and that's your migration plan. Additionally, because of the deduplication, Comet will deduplicate an old VMware backup with a new Proxmox backup, so you don't have to restart your backup jobs from scratch. You don't lose your backup history when migrating. So this can be a really powerful migration feature. And this goes both ways. You can restore from Proxmox into Hyper-V. You can restore from Hyper-V into VMware. You can perform a physical disk image backup job and then do a physical to virtual lift into Proxmox and so on. So just really cool new feature and capability for Comet that is available now in Comet 25.8 Titan. So please check it out and send us all of your feedback. We're really excited to make this the best possible feature we can before lifting that beta label off, probably in the next quarterly release, but we'll see. So that's Proxmox. What else is new in Comet 25.8 Titan? RPM and MSI installers. So if you're a system administrator, you probably know what these are. In Comet, you've got your management console, and from the management console, you download the backup agent that gets installed on the customer's computer. And we do things this way so that the backup agent can be modified and rebranded for white labeling so that the installer that you download is somewhat specific to you, your company, your branding, your management console. Next time when you go to download the backup agent from your Comet management console, you'll see some new options on the downloads page. And so firstly, for Windows users, the installer is now available as both classic exe and a new MSI format. So this is alongside the existing exe option. If you've got any integrations or scripts that use the exe installer, don't worry, it's not going away. This is just an option for people who prefer the MSI install type. And this seems like, you know, not necessarily something that people would have strong opinions about, but there are reasons to prefer MSI. The main reason you might prefer it is because basically Intune has got a built-in feature to deploy an MSI out to your whole customer base. And AD, GPOs, third-party RMMs as well often support MSIs as a native format for sort of silent bulk deployment. It's a normal installer. It's got an interface, so you can just run it normally. But this really is mostly aimed at that bulk silent deploy, automated deploy use case. So we made sure that this does support silent login. You can either pass an argument to the MSI exec process when running the installer, or you can use the lobby mode feature. So in that mode, the device, you just run the installer directly. The device can connect to your management console, and then you can remotely assign that device into a Comet user account and get the backups all configured fully remotely. Last thing to say about the MSI is that we did 64-bit only. So Comet does support 32-bit and 64-bit Windows still in the exe installer. But I'm sort of making the assumption that people who are, remotely managing a user base, that's managed IT. And if you have managed IT support, then you probably got rid of all your 32-bit Windows like 20 years ago now. As well as MSI, in Comet 25.8 Titan, we have also added an RPM installer. And likewise, we're not getting rid of the existing deb and generic options. They're staying, of course. The deb installer is really easy to use on Debian family distros, and that's including Ubuntu. And the new RPM installer is easy to use on Red Hat family distros, including CentOS, Fedora, Alma, Rocky, Oracle Linux, Azure Linux, and all of those guys. If you have previously been using the generic tar installer on those operating systems, when you install the RPM, it will detect the previous installation and convert it to the RPM installer. So it's safe to just upgrade by just installing the RPM over the top. Everything there gets handled automatically. There are some great benefits to using the RPM installer. For one, you can use, RPM and DNF to check the version. It's more consistent with everything else that's installed, and mostly it also comes with the working system D unit for automatic startup. So no more messing with custom startup rules or crontab reboot rules. To get Comet to start up automatically, just systemctl start backup tool, and you're away laughing. Now, there's a lot of different Linux distros out there, and some differences between them are important and some are not that important. One really interesting difference between the sort of deb type distros and RPM type distros is that deb technology allows you in the installer to stop and prompt for the username and password, the login details, and RPM technology does not. So the RPM installs are always non-interactive. So when you install the RPM, it will display a message about how to log in. There's one command you run, backup tool, login prompt. You run that command after installation, and it will ask for a username and password to log into the device. So CentOS users, Red Hat users, Alma users, I'm sure you'll be very pleased with this new feature. Just having the system unit there and working is a huge time saver. So great to have these new options available in Comet 25.8 Titan. Moving on. Just a small announcement to make here. So Comet is very flexible with storage. Our main product, we're just software developers. Our main product is just the backup software. We leave the storage generally up to the professionals, whether that's our offering is powered by our partners, but you don't have to use that. You can also bring your own storage to Comet, back up to any provider you like. And we integrate with dozens of the best providers, including, Wasabi Backblaze, Amazon AWS, as well as any provider that's S3 compatible, SFTP compatible, and so on. One of the providers that we integrate with is a company called Impossible Cloud. Why would you choose them over any other storage company? Their key points are they are European. They're an EU company, EU storage regions. If you're based in the US or elsewhere, it's fine to choose them too, but particularly if you're based in the EU and you have digital sovereignty requirements or compliance requirements, we're sort of definitely in an era of wanting to localize the data storage wherever possible. And also generally, it's a good idea to have your storage in the same country just for performance reasons. So about these guys, Impossible Cloud, they've got a great competitive price, excellent performance. Like I say, especially if your customers are in the EU, that low latency does really help Comet. We've supported Impossible Cloud for a while now. We're on good terms. And in Comet 25.8, we've just added support for their new regions. So it's great to have more regional options available and see them continuing to grow as a truly European cloud provider. Congratulations to them on the launch. And if you're a user of Impossible Cloud and Comet, you'll see the new regions available in the drop-down options when configuring a storage vault or storage gateway. Something else new in Comet 25.8 Titan, we've done just a little polishing to the web interface and upgrading of some of the user interface components that we rely on. So when you upgrade to Comet 25.8, you'll see the tree views have changed. The new design is just a little sharper and snappier. The buttons and selection options all line up neatly. The row heights are all consistent. So it's just crisper, more professional looking. And the view also loads a lot faster if you have a lot of snapshots. I know on the screenshot I've only got just the one here, but when you've got a lot, you'll see this is much more responsive. This improvement affects everywhere we use the tree view in the web interface. So browsing for snapshots, but also browsing files for restore and granular restore, looking at what files were backed up in a backup job. So it's consistently improved in all of those cases. And another thing we've made more consistent is the tables. So recently we added support for grouping user accounts on the users page, and it meant that that one table was slightly different to all of our other tables. In Comet 25.8, we've streamlined and unified that. So our user interface is sleek and consistent, and now all of the tables are based on the same technology, work the same way again, which is great. You'll find it looks pretty much the same, but you'll find some small changes. The page navigation now uses a drop down, so you can very quickly get through a lot of pages. The quick search was rebuilt from the ground up. Some features are faster, so sort of an under the hood change, but really just making Comet's interface more consistent and putting us on a solid footing. There have also been some look and feel changes for Comet Hosted. So Comet Hosted, this is our service where we host the Comet Management Console for you in our AWS cloud. This quarter, we've added a quick link to jump from your management console back to the account.cometbackup.com website, your Comet account portal. Now, you could always quickly jump in the other direction from account portal into Comet Hosted, and now you can jump back again. So that's nice, working on your customers here in the management console, and then it's just one click, jump over to the account portal for checking your billing or raising a support ticket with us. So no more getting lost between the two systems. And for new Comet hosted users, we've also added a link in the first time guide. Does anyone remember this? The guide that shows up on a fresh new Comet server? And there's a new section at the top to book a call with us if you need any assistance. Now, immediately, we had some questions about these two features, like who gets to see this? What is the white labeling? What's the branding risk? And not to worry, This is all stuff that's only visible on Comet hosted, and it's only visible if you haven't rebranded the server. So only if you're still on Comet branding. So if you're reselling Comet server access to a reseller, a tenant organization under a sub-brand, this will not be visible. Nothing to worry about there. Okay, managing large accounts. There are a few new features for this in Comet 25.8 Titan. But just to give you some background information, in Comet, you've got your management console. Inside that, there are user accounts, and then there are devices, that's physical PCs and servers and laptops that are logged into that user account. So there can be multiple devices in one user account. And in a user account, each device has its own private protected items. So, if I'm backing up C drive /users/Mason, obviously that only exists on my device. It doesn't exist, that path doesn't exist on the other devices logged into the same account. So each device has its own protected items, but storage is a bit different. It's definitely possible for devices to share the same storage vault, especially if it's a cloud account like Impossible Cloud or Wasabi or Amazon AWS, where you're running your own storage gateway or SFTP server. So there are pros and cons to sharing storage vaults. If you share a storage vault between multiple devices in the user account, those devices can deduplicate data together. That's really great. It's great for space saving. It's great for efficiency. We've seen some phenomenal, like 50 times reduction in storage caused just by devices sharing a single vault. In order to deduplicate, you have to sort of know what's there that you can deduplicate against. You have to know what's being stored so that you can deduplicate against it. You have to be able to look in and see. And that is a trust boundary. You have to let these devices look at each other's backups. And you can disable the user interface for that at the policy settings, but at a technical level, it still has to happen. If the devices are in the same account, then they have a certain level of trust with each other. So the pros of sharing: better deduplication, costs you less money with your storage provider. Cons, that sharing is potentially risky if the devices don't really trust each other. That's usually enough info to make the decision. If you can share, great, go ahead and do it. And if you can't, just keep the devices by themselves, put them in their own accounts. Comet will still deduplicate just within that device, deduplicate today's backup against yesterday's backup and so on. So it's still good. But yeah, if you need the privacy isolation, then you just need it. Now, there is actually a third situation. In this third situation, there's cases where the devices do trust each other, but you just have an extremely large number of them, or if you have an extremely large volume of data, you might be in a third situation where all of the devices are in a single user account, so they're trusted to each other, but with per device storage vaults. On the face of it, this has all of the weaknesses, none of the strengths, but there are reasons. It means if you want to be able to quickly, restore data from another device while still sort of putting a lid on each device's data. So this is interesting. To make things easier for people in this third situation, we recently added some options to automatically create new storage vaults for each new device that's registered into the user account. So you have one big user account with one shared password. So all the devices are sharing a password, so they trust each other for restoring each other's data. But at the same time, each device getting its own private storage vault just to sort of keep a lid on that data. Also does help stop the devices standing on each other's toes. So you turn on this option and you get a lot of storage vaults in the user account, one for each device. So we added this recently, last quarter. What's new in Comet 25.8 Titan is we've made it so that when you use this feature, the storage vaults that come out of it have the device's name in them. So instead of being named new storage vault 2, new storage vault 3, they're named new storage vault in brackets Steve's PC, or new storage vault somebody's laptop or Windows server. Much easier to see what's going on. We've also improved how this feature interacts with policy. So Comet has a lot of policy settings and features to control almost every aspect of the product: what's allowed, what's not allowed, what happens automatically. what features are turned on and turned off, and so on. One of the policy features we have is to automatically create new protected items for devices that join the account. So if you want, you can have a policy that says, when a device joins the account, it gets its own, private protected item that says backup, C drive/users, and we'll capture that data automatically, no further settings. Now in Comet 25.8, that feature works with this feature. So you can have a protected item that automatically gets directed automatically to the automatically created storage vault. So just chaining these automations together, making sure they work together for a fully seamless multi-vault setup within a user account, driven entirely by policy. This is my last slide, just running through a few more headline features in the Comet 25.8 Titan release. Linux disk image. So a year or two ago now, we added support for taking disk image backups on Linux. So you can do a bare metal backup of sort of entire disks and partitions on your Linux server or Linux device. Linux is really interesting. It's excellent at a lot of things. One difficulty is the disk snapshotting infrastructure is a little bit more DIY than it is on Windows. And so we've had to ship a custom Linux kernel driver in order to take these disk image snapshots. Linux can't quite do it by itself. It needs this extra driver. The driver gets installed automatically when you use the protected item, so it doesn't require any extra steps. But what's new in Comet 25.8 is we've updated the driver to support more recent Linux kernel versions, including the 6.15 kernel used by the latest Ubuntu updates. So if you're using the latest Ubuntu, upgrade to Comet 25.8 Titan, and the disk snapshots will start working. I've got a feeling this is going to be a regular thing as Linux keeps changing and our driver has to change along with it. So our custom driver works to snapshot any Linux block device, but it's not the only snapshotting system supported in Comet. Next time you set up a Linux server, in the installer for your distro, check if there's an option to use an LVM thin pool on the root file system, because then we can take native LVM snapshots, and then you won't need the snapshot driver. Another new feature in Comet 25.8 is related to our storage gateway product. So storage gateway is the part of Comet server where the device backs up to the Comet server, to the storage gateway, and then that stores the data, maybe locally on the server's RAID array, or it can forward the data on to a cloud provider. This is a really important part of Comet. If you're hosting an on-prem installation of Comet, it's something you might want to consider. Previously, if you were using Storage Gateway and the storage disappeared, like you had a RAID failure or using a cloud provider and the cloud provider's down or internet connection went down, Comet would throw an error in the logs and quit. Can't be much of a storage gateway if your storage isn't there. We found that made it hard to diagnose failures and see what was going on. So in Comet 25.8 Titan, we've made it so that if your storage is unavailable, we will start the server anyway with a big error banner. So hopefully that makes it easier to see what's going on and to make it easier to troubleshoot your on-prem storage. And last little enhancement for this quarter is for our macOS client. We had some reports that it was requesting that Rosetta would get installed. So Rosetta is the compatibility layer that lets an Apple Silicon Mac, the M1, M2, M3, M4 Macs, let them run classic Intel x86 software. In Comet, we've had a native Apple Silicon version for years now. We don't need Rosetta, but somehow our installer was requesting for it anyway. Mac OS would say, this app requires Rosetta, click here to install from the App Store. It was one click and not a big deal, but not necessary. We've fixed that, and now your Apple Silicon Mac users will now have a smoother time getting started with Comet. So that's all we have for today. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to pop them in the chat widget if you haven't already. Just for a recap, I talked about the new features and enhancements in Comet 25.8 Titan, including Proxmox, this great new hypervisor on the market, and our major new feature for Titan. The Proxmox protected item supports backing up VMs and containers, including cross-hypervisor restore and migration. I also talked about the new MSI and RPM installers, which can help with bulk deployment. Impossible Cloud's new UK and Denmark regions. And a couple other little things. Improvements to the look and feel of the web interface. The new features for managing multiple storage vaults inside a single shared Comet user account. And the kernel compatibility for Linux disk image backups and more. I can see a few questions here. There's a question here about support for Proxmox 8 and 9. So currently the product supports Proxmox 8. Proxmox 9 came out quite late in development. The beta does not support Proxmox 9 just yet. Proxmox 9 had a pretty major change to the way the storage infrastructure works. Like, for instance, people are quite excited that it can now do snapshots over iSCSI, which is something that Proxmox 8 couldn't do, but that did require quite a big change to the way Proxmox 9 manipulates local disks that did affect Comet. It is something that we 100% will have working before we take the beta label off, but for now it's Proxmox 8 only, I'm afraid. Another question here, how does Proxmox Backup differ from Proxmox's own offering? The key benefit to using Comet's backup is just integration with the rest of your Comet infrastructure and Comet world. If you're used to remotely managing things from the Comet management console, that's really a key benefit. Of course, deduplication across VMs, the granular restore, cross-hypervisor restore, support for cloud providers. It's all things that we think are great features of Comet. Another question here, are there any plans for cloud-to-cloud backup of Microsoft 365? So Comet does support Microsoft 365 backup. Our 365 backup is done as a protected item, same as pretty much all of Comet's backup features. And that does mean that you need a device to do the work of downloading data from Microsoft 365 and uploading it to your storage location. We have absolutely considered making this a cloud-to-cloud feature. I'm afraid this is something you'll have to upvote our feature request for it on our feature voting page. Stay informed of any changes in this area. Another question, are there any upcoming Proxmox features in the stable release and any ETA on the stable release will be out? So the beta program has actually been really good for us this time around. We've had a lot of feedback, and we've seen the Proxmox feature get used on larger and larger installations successfully. Everything seems really reliable. The bug reports that we're getting back have been really minor things, largely cosmetic and not that serious. With the Proxmox 9 compatibility upgrade, I think we'll be technically ready. And then it's just a matter of taking the label off. So we're tossing up between taking the beta label off mid this cycle or waiting the 3 months until the next quarterly cycle, but there will be, it's not far away. It's not far away at all. And of course, you'll all be notified when that happens. Cool. Well, I think that is all the questions we have time for today, but we still want to hear from you. If you have any questions at all, we're always happy to help out. We're more than happy to hear your questions by ticket through the usual ticket system, or you can email us, hello@cometbackup.com, or we do support phone calls. Now, our company is based in New Zealand, so we have support teams for round-the-clock technical support, but if you want a sales call or if you want really advanced technical support, we'll need to figure out a good time that suits both of us. So we're more than happy to jump on a call, and often that's a really quick way of clearing the air and getting answers to any questions you might have. So that's all from us here at Comet Backup. Hopefully you've managed to take away some useful information. Please check out the latest version of Comet 25.8 Titan. All users of the previous quarterly series, 25.5 Hyperion and earlier, you're encouraged to upgrade to get access to the new Proxmox feature, but we're happy for you to keep using older quarterly versions if you feel like it. Hope you're all keeping well and safe, and you can expect another webinar for the next quarterly release in 3 months' time. Cheers.